so many manufacturers are pigeonholing themselves, right? If they have something proprietary, I'm not going to go to that manufacturer because then I have to redesign everything else upstream. Like, I'm going to go to
hang on. Say that again, please.
We want things that are widely adopted, right? Because then I can use the speakers that I like and I can use the mixer that I like, and I don't have to make sure that they both speak the same dialect of Latin, right? Like, it's just, they're pricing themselves out of designs with proprietary stuff.
That is the first reference to dead languages today. So this is awesome. Thank you.
Am I like the only one who didn't study Latin for med school?
Yep.
Yes.
Sony and TCL make it official. Some serious tariff issues coming for digital signage and the future of AV over IP. All that and more next on AV Week. This is AV Week, episode 783, recorded Friday, April 3rd, 2026. Interoperable AV. This is AV Week, your weekly wrap-up of the biggest news and stories in the AV and the IT world. Sony and TCL make it official. The tariff effects hit Stratacache. Cedia takes its case to Capitol Hill. Again. Now let's get into it. First up, the deal that has been building since January is now official. Sony and TCL have signed legally binding agreements for a strategic partnership. The new joint venture is called Bravia Inc., INC. Now, here is how the ownership breaks down. TCL holds 51%, Sony 49%. And here's what moves under all of that umbrella. Consumer televisions, B2B flat panel displays under the Bravia name, B2B LED, projectors, home audio, the entire home entertainment stack. Sony's manufacturing subsidiary, Sony EMCS, transfers fully to TCL as part of the deal. Another manufacturing unit in Shanghai is still being worked out. Products will still carry the Sony and Bravia names. So from a consumer standpoint, not a whole lot changes on the box or on the display. Bottom line here, Sony keeps the brand equity, TCL gets the factory, and the home entertainment market and, quite frankly, B2B display market has a new power structure. Macro pressures are starting to draw blood in the digital signage industry. Stratacache, one of the biggest names in digital signage, has confirmed a round of layoffs at its Dayton, Ohio headquarters. CEO Chris Riegel confirmed the cuts in a statement saying the company is, quote, doing some layoffs to reduce costs. He cited tariffs and what he called the global memory spike and supply chain difficulties as, quote, certainly headwinds. That is one way to put it. Company employs around 1,200 people worldwide and manages roughly 2.5 million devices across 30 global offices. Now, the number of cuts in Ohio stayed below the 50 employee threshold. That would have triggered a formal WARN Act notification. Layoffs have also been reported at Scala, the Stratacache-owned digital signage software company based in Malvern, Pennsylvania. Samsung has launched a new 13-inch Color E-paper display in the U.S. Now, the model number is EM13DX. EM13DX. This is not your typical screen. It uses digital ink technology. It draws 0 watts when displaying a static image. Power actually is only consumed when the content is updated. Target markets for this are retail, hospitality, workplace, basically anywhere you've got printed signs that need constant updates. It's an A4 size lightweight display. Content management works locally through the Samsung ePaper app or remotely through Samsung's VXT platform. The housing is independently verified to contain 45% recycled plastics and 10% bioresin from phytoplankton. Samsung says that material innovation cuts carbon emissions in manufacturing by more than 40%. In other industry news, the smart home industry spent a day in Washington. Cedia held its third annual Day on Capitol Hill on March 26th. The organization's board of directors and industry partners went door to door across the House and Senate. The biggest ask? A formal occupational classification for the term technology integrator. Right now, that role does not officially exist in the U.S. Labor Department's framework. Cedia wants to change that and to build a national apprenticeship pathway alongside it. Group also staged a live demonstration called AI Comes Home for the Congressional Smart Cities Caucus, showcasing Lutron, IC Real-Time, and Sonos in an integrated smart home environment. Several members of Congress stopped by. Legislation on the table included the Student Debt Alternative and CTE Awareness Act, as well as the Veterans Energy Transition Act. CEDIA's global CEO, Daryl Friedman, said the goal is to strengthen career pathways and secure formal recognition for what technology integrators do. Finally, a global milestone worth marking. Epson, one of the world's leading LED manufacturers, celebrated its 25th anniversary with a global spring event in Shenzhen, China. The gathering brought in around 100 international partners, customers, and industry stakeholders from Europe, the Americas, and Asia. Chairman Hansen Ding opened the event by tracing Epson's journey from a domestic startup to a global platform for LED innovation. Attendees got hands-on access to Epson's latest hardware, including new products debuted at ISE 2026 just a few weeks ago. Partners also toured the company's manufacturing facility and R&D showroom in Shenzhen. Vice President of Epson outlined Epson's brand evolution, specifically pointing out how the company is pivoting toward what it's calling comprehensive visual ecosystems rather than traditional performance benchmarks alone. That is your AV news for the week. Stick around where we take a look at DV LED basketball courts and the future of AV over IP. This is AV Week.
Hey listeners, it's your AV sneakerhead, Jennifer Weaver. Listen to AV Career Masterminds, where I chat all things job-related in the audio-visual industry. You can find AV Career Masterminds where you subscribe to podcasts.
Welcome back. Now we bring in our fantastic roundtable, and good Lord, this is one of those shows where I don't have to do a lot. With us to discuss some stuff, Rebecca Sollins. How are you, ma'am?
Hi, Tim. I am great as always. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you, ma'am. A young man I got to hang out with for a couple of hours in Austin at South by Southwest. My buddy, my pal, Mr. Chris Netto. How are you, sir?
I'm super. Thanks for asking.
And I get to hang out in Vegas not too long from now. At NAB and then of course at Infocom.
Yes.
And a young man that I've known for a lot of years, finally having him on the show, but we've been hanging out as well at Almo E4 events. Mr. Tom Kerr from Almo. How are you, sir?
Having more fun than allowed by law.
He lives in Virginia, so that's saying something. All right, here we go. First story. This one, I apologize in advance to all my friends who have any sort of dealings with IPMX. From AV Magazine, when London's world-famous Science Museum redesigned its space gallery, the centerpiece was called, quote-unquote, Science on a Sphere. It was a globe exhibit, or is a globe exhibit, that needed 4 perfectly synchronized video streams fed from a climate-controlled server room at clear the other side of the building. Now, they could have done a whole lot of things. What they did was choose Matrox's convert IP encoders and decoders running, wait for it, IPMX. The Panasonic projectors had integrated Matrox SDM decode modules. All of this put together on the same on the production lane, on the actual network. Now, what this looks like is it is the exact same pipes that the rest of the building actually uses. Rebecca, I have been on IPMX's case for probably 4 or 5 years now, and my constant mantra to them is show me a use case, show me an install, show me product, right? Show me interoperability. Well, a little bit of humble pie here. This is the project, right? This is an install. Where does IPMX now sit in this world of AV over IP?
I am literally in the middle of designing a system where this is a perfect use case for stuff like this, okay? It's a very large open air amphitheater where they're going to have digital signage with live feeds that has to be lip sync timed, right? Like, because it's a huge amphitheater. And the way that we've sort of achieved this in the past is by using regular AV over IP, digital signage, whatever systems, and then having a separate like SDI broadcast feed to every single display in the building, right? Which is really annoying, but that's literally the path that we're having to go down to get this sort of functionality. If this can happen, this will be a very, very cool standard for the AV industry.
Really, really quick question, and I'm not trying to pick apart your design because I am not qualified to do so. Is the separate signal on the one you're designing now, is that because the TVs are just on a different at different time, like people aren't going to be watching that and watching the big screen at the same time, so who cares?
There are use cases where they will be watching like the same thing that's happening on the stage on the TVs, but then they can switch them over to signage as well. So then, you'll have like your regular content, or you can use them as a broadcast display.
Mr. Netto, when you and I first got together and started getting to know each other, there was a whole bunch of alphabet soup coming down the pipeline. A couple of them have dropped off since then. Where does IPMX sit in this new this new environment of AV over IP on the actual IP network that runs everything else?
Well, it wouldn't be AV if we didn't have a supervillain versus a superhero. And this is what you got, right? You have to have always two dogs in the fight. And this is one that I've been watching from the sidelines and eating my popcorn and going, why does NAB really love IPMX, while why does the Infocom show really love AV over IP? And it really comes back to the fact that we just can't get I'm just going to leave that explicitive out. We just really can't get it together when it comes to figuring out what we want to do. We have really nice folks over at SDVOE that have their version. We have IPMX on the other side with their version. Now, can the two coexist? 100%. And you're starting to see it blur, because it's not just, and the simple excuse of why we don't use one or use the other has been, do you really need compressed versus uncompressed? And, do you want to, do you need that much high bandwidth, right? We're still dealing with people that pretty much want to transport AV over IP for video conferencing, and why would you need to transport uncompressed on video conferencing? I don't know. This just seems like, and I know why you picked the story, Tim. This is going to be one that you can put on a shelf. We can come back to it in 3 years, and I guarantee you we're still in the same fight, because it won't get fixed. Nobody will make a pick. Nobody will make a selection. But when I went and walked a local show here a couple years ago with our friend Meg Smith, who works for the fruit company. She gave me the whole download on the whole IPMX and where it's going and what she felt as an end user. And it is very specific. You're not going to get many, and who we deal with is obviously the big corporate customers. They're not going to ask for it by name. They're just going to demand it. So we have to kind of make a decision, but we're not good at that, right? We can't figure out what we want for lunch, let alone what standard we want. So yeah, good luck with this story, because I appreciate what IPMX is doing. I love the use case and I love the idea. Rebecca, good luck. But there's always going to be a catch, right? And it's going to keep coming back to, do you really need all that for that application now? And Rebecca's 100%. But I'm just going to be the naysayer. I'm just going to continue doing what AV does. Let's just overcomplicate it. Come on, tell me why.
And this goes all the way back to, ever since I was in college, theater kid, what is more important, sound or audio, or audio or video or whatever, and it's fighting over prioritization, and this is just a thing that changes that prioritization, right?
It's lighting, by the way. That's more important.
Oh, God, don't even.
Sorry.
We had this conversation last week. It's audio. It's always audio. It's always been audio.
Of course it is, dude. Absolutely. Even AI will tell you that it's audio.
100%. All right, Tom. We brought out the whole alphabet soup. We brought out the litany of transport possibilities. Why, if Netto's right, why won't we ever get out of this? Why won't we ever pick?
Has been driving me crazy for eons. Anyway, audio is still more important, because without the audio, it's just surveillance. Okay. Currently, IPMX is just part of the grab bag. of AVB, NDI, NDI-HX, SDVOE, Dante AV Ultra, Dante AVH, SRT, IPMX, SIMPTE 2110, plus all the different manufacturers have their own proprietary AV over IB transports. Now, IPMX may be gaining some traction. I say that because just before ISE, they had an interoperability event in Geneva, handing out, and they handed out to like 10 different manufacturers and 48 products, true interoperability between products. Now, most of those manufacturers were broadcast based. Will that get to our Pro AV manufacturers? That's the question. There will not be a clear winner until, and I think it was well over a decade ago, on the Infocom show floor, there were signs everywhere that said Dante spoken here. And we knew we had something for audio. We do not have it yet for video, because honestly, the last interoperability video transport that we had was RGB HV. You could do a Tron piece here and an auto patch here and an Altinex here, and it just didn't matter. Okay, it was 5 volts peak to peak and 0.7 on H&V, and you're done. That was the last interoperable standard that we've had. I think it was on that lack of interoperability was part of the problem with HD base T, because you took that 5-play convergence and everybody took bits and pieces and added and everything else. So HD base T is not interoperable between manufacturers either. And I get it. If you're a manufacturer, you want to own the room. But this fortress mentality is not serving us. I mean, because on refresh cycles of every 5 years or whatever, you end up having to rip and replace everything.
So many manufacturers are pigeonholing themselves, right? If they have something proprietary, I'm not going to go to that manufacturer because then I have to redesign everything else upstream. Like, I'm going to go
No,
to
hang on. Say that again, please.
We want things that are widely adopted, right? Because then I can use the speakers that I like and I can use the mixer that I like, and I don't have to make sure that they both speak the same dialect of Latin, right? Like, it's just, they're pricing themselves out of designs with proprietary stuff.
That is the first reference to dead languages today. So this is awesome.
Yes.
I just want interoperability. That way we can concentrate on what really matters is the audiovisual environment. And we don't have to try and figure out whether this box is going to do what I need it to do.
Unfortunately, this is going back to what I said. It's the same thing. It's the battles. This is why I believe that strategic alliances, that phrasing, that marketing term, sounds and feels a lot more comforting than ecosystems. Because when you start talking about the ecosystems, what we learned 5 years ago when we all shut down and Snap, and next thing you know, we're gone, and this reappeared 3 years later, is that when something went wrong or went bad and you needed to fix it, and if you were in that ecosystem, next thing you know, Rebecca's, statement comes to light. Now we got to rip out everything and redo, and that is the downside. And unfortunately, I think that our end users, the people that are in the conference rooms, not our integrators, obviously not our manufacturers, the people that are physically in the space are getting very good at understanding that, yes, it all works very well, but if I need to swap out my camera, I don't have to redo everything. If I want to swap out my speakers, I don't need to redo everything. Help me understand this, because it was a point in the back in the day, since we're going back to the RGB HV days, where you can, take something down and swap it out, and guess what? Just connect. Everything just worked. Oh my God, Tom, I just proved that yes, 15 years ago was the last standard. Oh my God.
I'm going to bring up a very uncomfortable thing, especially for our manufacturer friends who are listening. There was one thing that happened out of COVID that it shined a light on this very problem, and that was when nobody could get anything. And I'm making a generic statement here, yes, right? But there were significant shortages and flat out outages of certain product lines. That proved to the IT manager, the integrator, that said, hey, this might not be a great idea to put all of our eggs in one basket, to put all of our eggs inside this fortress. And they have been clamoring for something like this, because whether somebody wants to agree with it or not, 30 years ago, we started talking about this AV IT convergence. It's happened. We are a part of the IT infrastructure. The things that we put in are endpoints, right? So we should start acting like that when it comes to our standards and our interoperability. And to Tom's point, who cares, but who cares about the transport? Why don't we focus on the magic of what makes AV so freaking special and not worry about how it gets from point A to point B?
Yeah, that's one of my biggest gripes is there are certain manufacturers who shall remain nameless that I specifically don't use because they use such proprietary transport mechanisms and I don't like the rest of their stuff, right? So they're literally just omitting themselves from being options.
My dream, honestly, is whatever device I have has an encoder with a fiber optic port, and everything else has fiber optic decoders
There you go.
with fiber optic, and we are done with all this nonsense.
Yes.
There it is. World peace.
I was hoping SDVOE was going to go somewhere, but nobody wants to get off of the 1 gig infrastructure.
Let's hit one more article before we get out of here. It was an article that I wrote on AVNation where we analyze, quite frankly, commercial displays and how they have crossed a certain threshold. They are not just output devices. I just said this. They're network endpoints. But there's a couple things about this, and number one is total cost of ownership, and that has been a drumbeat for at least the last 5 or 6 years, and displays are really pushing into this now. Energy consumption across hundreds of rooms, the life cycle reliability, the security posture of those displays, giving it centralized fleet management that is a software. That's something that Neto and I talked about at South by Southwest. All of this ecosystem, this rise of, let's say, OS-driven displays. Some of them are running Android, some of them are running their own OSs, but all of this comes down to making sure that this fits into an IT infrastructure and from a security standpoint, as well as a lifecycle standpoint, and at the end of the day, a total cost of ownership standpoint. Neto, when you look at this, and Chris works for Midwich on a global scale here, in your experience in talking to customers as well as your integrator partners, how do you make the argument, the TCO, or the total cost of ownership argument, to both the integrator as well as to the end user, not to the IT director, but to the procurement team, to the chief financial officer, who is simply looking at a line item on a PO?
About displays?
About displays, about anything, really.
Well, I mean, that same CTO or CIO at one point was okaying the display that's on top of a desk, so it shouldn't be that hard, right?
Yeah.
Come on, our IT brethren got this down, right? Why can't we? No. Everything being an endpoint is got its advantages. Obviously, as we start moving towards the conversations of preventative maintenance and total, looking into things, if something goes bad, you don't want a dummy display up there anymore, because if the thing is not switched to the right thing, how are you going to know? How are you going to be able to assist? Remote assistance, remote troubleshooting, all that comes into play. What doesn't that executive have at home that is not connected to their network is the problem. This argument would have been an argument maybe 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Today, and today it's becoming a little easier to have that conversation. I think that we, what we do in the world of AV on the commercial side has really gotten a boost, and our end users and the people that are truly making the purchases are a lot wiser to things. If it's from the IT side, great, that's wonderful. But I think that people finally understood that, a big display requires, certain type of maintenance. They're turning on their TV. It just happened to me. I pulled the TV out that I had purchased for Black Friday for a space, and I hadn't turned it on since Black Friday. I turned it on. I had 5 updates. That's just part of the gig. Now I'm a tech guy, so I'm okay with that. But I don't think I've ever heard my son call from his room, "Hey, Dad, why does my TV need an update?" Like he just
does it.
It just does it. And I think that's part of where technology is kind of going with trying to be, not in your face. We've complained about, the fact that technology is can be an issue, right? We don't want it to be an issue. That's what we're integrating. That's why we're integrators, is because we want to do stuff that just sits there quietly and does its job. And when it does its job, it gets no credit, and that's awesome. Last time somebody called me about a great video conference was 98. That was about it. And that's it. What a great conference I had on video. That's awesome. Now it's part of the thing, man. I don't know. I think the conversations with TVs that used to do things has really changed. And I think that a lot of the technology, I think the acceptance for technology having to have its upgrades, its updates, and being connected to a bigger conversation, a bigger piece. You can thank all the little devices at home, from your watch to your rings to your doorbells to, man, there's people with smart toilets for all I know. And they're all connected because we got to know. There's just way too much information. The key is going to be, what are we as AV doing with all this data that we're collecting? That still has not been answered, and that's the great mystery. We collect all this data. We don't employ data scientists. Maybe AI will truly save us when it comes to collecting all this information. So we'll see. Well, that's a whole episode, as Tim will say.
Never trust anything that cannot count past one.
You know what the bigger conversation really is going to be, Tim, is many years ago on the Infocom side, there was a whole big push about the smart buildings.
Yes.
And that came out gangbusters. This is awesome. A living, breathing, talking, emotional building that's going to tell us what it needs. That conversation ended real quick when we started realizing all these little simple systems that operated in the background that didn't talk to each other.
Because everybody wants to push their dashboard. But what happens when you have a dashboard for the lighting system and a dashboard for HVAC? And again, we're coming back to interoperability. People want to do this on one platform, one transport mechanism, one whatever.
On one AVWeek, we are going to fix this in one shot. And it all comes back to the same thing.
Give me my Nobel Peace Prize.
And management by IT as well. They don't want to open all these
Exactly.
interfaces. They want to see one dashboard, and
we get panicky when you start talking about fire and security and that on our net. We don't want that responsibility. That will clam some people up. But I mean, to truly have your TVs, your fire systems, your toilet, your whatever you got to connect all together and get an actual pulse of where this is going, I think that's what people want, but they're scared. And then there's the people that have protected their systems and their fiefdoms and don't want to let that go either. God help us. Man, we are going down a crazy road. Did you think this episode was going to be easy, Tim? No.
Tim knows better than to put us on one thing together and assume
this is exactly what I bargained for. Mr. Kerr, a couple of different angles to pull it back a little bit from the ledge. Number one is the total energy. Yeah, I know the energy consumption, but also the whole TCO, the total cost of ownership of these systems, because the displays aren't going away, right? You could make the argument that displays, especially large format displays, are pushing into the arena of projection and projectors, but these aren't going away. So what does today's IT and AV manager have to look at when it comes to the energy consumption, to the complete cost of something as they're putting it in?
Yeah, I will preface this saying both the toilet and Outlook on Artemis 2 needed repair.
And there was nobody at the help desk.
This is something that when you start talking about sustainability, lead ratings, those kinds of things, and they want to look at energy ratings. Is this Energy Star rated? Does this have an EPEAT rating? Okay, what is this going to consume over time? And that really is mainly for just the displays. Now, the EPA had some Energy Star stuff for Pro AV at one point, and it got up to version 3, and then they sunsetted that in 2024. Because we know that AV is nothing but watt-sucking devices. So the IT managers, if they're going to look at displays, maybe they want to take a look at some energy ratings and the rest of that, because that could impact sustainability ratings. At some point, that could get into ASHRAE 90.1, monitoring plug loads, because we know AV is not energy efficient at all. So how is this going to impact, you talk about the total cost of ownership. And, we're looking at refresh cycles of every 5 years and that kind of stuff. I wrote an article back in December, modern AV, throwaway living. It is like the 1950s all over again. And we are living that day in and day out on AV, throwing away gear. It's insanity.
Yeah, I'll have Mitchell put a link to that article because it's very, very good. Rebecca, you will maybe have the last word on this. We'll see what happens. But
You know, I love having the last word.
go for it.
You know, I mean, I can't agree more with what's already been said. And this is one of those things where ubiquity or ubiquitousness, I'm not sure which is the proper form of that word, of AV in our everyday lives means people are more used to it, right? They're more accepting of having large displays everywhere. And they're not really thinking about how much power that's consuming or whatever, right? We've just gotten so used to, oh yeah, no, your house has to have 5 TVs in it now, right? Whereas 50 years ago, you were lucky if you had one in the living room. However, at the same time, things are becoming more energy efficient. So, you know, per TV, that is dropping, but then we add more TVs. So I think just not getting used to just throwing things away. Like, we need to sort of re-normalize being able to replace things, being able to, fix things, stuff like that. I think getting back to that mindset is very important. Like, you know, again, Neto will make fun of me for being young, but like when I was in college, we had a class that was all about breaking open and repairing and soldering and, you know, fixing electronics. Like, we need to get over this just throw everything away mindset, and that will eliminate our total cost of ownership, right? Because like, what happens when recently at the pool hall where I play, big TV stopped working. And the owner of the pool hall was like, hey, Becca, can you take a quick look at it? I opened it up in 2 seconds, figured out that it was the power supply that had gone bad. Bought a new one from LG for $50, replaced the power supply. That TV is still going, right? Like, we need to get over this mindset that we just replace things. And that will lower your total cost of ownership. It will lower your infrastructure costs. It will lower everything.
Remember when AV was in the mindset of modular things, like even cell phones at the time were talking about, hey, you can unplug this and you can put this new module in, and guess what? It would make your phone last.
I've mixed on a CADAC. Like, I have literally replaced channel strips in the middle of a Broadway style number. Like, we need to get back to being able to fix things.
Yeah.
Well, and that leads into a couple things. How many people know how to repair something, and how much of this stuff is actually repairable? And here's something, because I see a lot of this. How many folks even know how to solder now?
Well, but here's the thing: I do, but so many people don't.
Okay, this is rare. Okay, I had a client the other day. Hey, I've got an XLR out of my wireless receiver, but my little input here has a little green thing, so I don't know that it's compatible.
Were they talking about a Phoenix connector? Okay.
Yeah.
Like, I get what you're saying, and this is a bigger problem, right? Because so many manufacturers have made things impossible to repair, and they do that for a number of reasons. Number one, we want things smaller and lighter. That makes them harder to repair, right? So that's just a side effect of that. And number two, so that you then have to buy a new object, right? The planned obsolescence. We can have this conversation about literally everything. However, there are people that are starting to fight back against this. There's a huge case against, I think it was John Deere tractors. And literally people were not allowed to repair their own tractors, right?
Repair.
So we as a society, like, again, the pendulum swings, right? We have, hopefully we're swinging back the other way, where people will start to realize that things are repairable. They need to be made that way. And then we will learn how to repair them again.
I like that. All right. That's a good place to stop. Mr. Neto, thank you, sir. How do people connect with you?
You can find me on LinkedIn, Christopher Neto, CTS. I still got those 3 little letters at the end of my name for some reason, and we'll see what happens. Outside of that, you can find me on the X platform, Chris_Neto. I'm still there, even though a lot of people have left. But LinkedIn's pretty much where you can find me, and if not, I'm somewhere in the air or at some airport or doing my my weekly travel thing. So see you there, and I'll see you next in NAB, Tim.
Yes, sir. NAB, 19th through the 22nd of April. We'll get to that in a second. Rebecca Sullins, thank you, ma'am. How do people connect with you?
You can also find me on LinkedIn. I am one of the people that left X, so you cannot find me there. But you can just Google Rebecca Sullins. It's not a very common name, and you can find me in all sorts of places, but LinkedIn is probably the best.
All right, very good. Mr. Kerr, thank you so much, sir. It has been a pleasure, and we'll do this again. So how do people connect with you or Alamo Pro AV?
You can find me on MySpace and Second Life.
My
No,
God.
just kidding.
Wow!
LinkedIn
It was
is
the Second Life that got me, not the MySpace. It was the Second Life.
This is
If you would
clearly
have dropped
after they.
Cities, I would have been out of my mind. I'm
Cities. Oh my gosh.
I was about to make a do they have to download this podcast on LimeWire joke. Like,
Oh wow.
anyway, LinkedIn is the place to go.
That was awesome. Look up Tom. I thought
Wiki that, folks. Wiki that. That's what you got to
wiki
say.
that.
Just tell them
Yeah,
wiki it.
just wiki that. All right. Connect with Tom on LinkedIn, but go by ProAV, Almo ProAV's website. My name is Tim Albright. Don't follow me anywhere, but go by the website, AVNation.tv. That's AVNation.tv. You will find this program and a host of others. Mr. Netto already mentioned it, but we will be going to Las Vegas for NAB. April 19th through the 22nd. By the time this drops, though, I will be on my way to Chicago to hang out with our buddy Nathan Catino and Logitech for LogiWorks in Chicago. If you would like to read something that I write that has nothing to do with technology, you can connect with me on LinkedIn, but go by the website if you would, please, AVNation.tv. That's AVNation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. That is all the time we have for AV Week.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
This is AV.
This
is AV Nation.
This is AVNation.
Hello, this is Steve Greenblatt, host of AVNation's State of Control podcast. Each month, Rich Fregosa and I explore trending topics related to control, programming, and automation in the audiovisual industry. We speak with a variety of AV professionals who share their perspectives, knowledge, and experiences. Please join us for this monthly conversation. Check out A State of Control on avnation.tv or wherever you get your podcasts.